Hello. So today I've got a deck profile for you here for a Simorgh Stun deck, utilizing the new Link monsters from Dual Overload, and we'll be getting into this video for the format of April of 2020. So without further ado, here we go. So first off, we run 3 copies of Simorgh Bird of Calamity, 3 copies of Simorgh Bird of Bringing, and only a single copy of Simorgh Bird of Beginning. These are your 3 different types of monsters that help you establish a very easy Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty. Simorgh Bird of Calamity is a Foolish Burial. You can send any Simorgh card from the deck to the graveyard. Very important for setting up further bodies to build up into your Link monsters. Simorgh Bird of Bringing is especially good at searching out the different spells and traps that are useful in the strategy. In fact, the trap that we will go over later is a key part of what makes this deck so resilient against the current meta as far as being able to set up a very strong turn 1 board. And Simorgh Bird of Bringing gives you another normal summon for Simorgh cards. So it's very good when you draw that card in another Simorgh because they all get their effects on normal summon, not special summon. So being able to have multiple special summons or normal summons before you start special summoning is very important to get your Link monster climbing going, as well as being able to search it with various effects being a level 1 winged beast. Next, outside of the Simorgh base cards, we run 3 copies of Dark Simorgh. Dark Simorgh is the best target that is a Dark Simorgh monster for the spell that we'd be running, which is the Simorgh Onslaught spell. This card prevents your opponent from setting cards by either card effect or manually, so they cannot set trap cards, they cannot set spell cards, cannot set monsters, and this really turns off the Subterror deck, for instance, because they cannot set things by card effect, as I said. So it can also special summon it from hand by banishing a Dark and a Wind from your graveyard, or it can special summon itself from your graveyard by banishing a Dark and a Wind from your hand. So it is a very good card against Eldritch in the current metagame, because if they can't set their cards, then their Eldritch is just a B-stick on the field, and it can really stop them from recurring their resources, as well as preventing other control-heavy decks from being able to set up a board against you and then try to combat you. It also gives you another body for Link climbing a good amount of the time. And in general, it's just you have to run a Dark Simorgh in the deck, and that's just the best one compared to the new one from Rising Rampage about a year ago. Beyond those, to make the deck more consistent, I run 3 copies of Predaplan Offra Scorpio, 3 Lone Fire Blossom, and 2 copies of Darlingtonian Cobra. The Predaplan engine is really important for this deck because Scorpio and Blossom can be a 1.5 card full combo for your board. I'll go over that in a moment, but generally speaking, this is a very good way to get bodies on board and to be able to play through a lot of back row, because an important part about the Simorgh cards is that they cannot special summon themselves from the graveyard by their own effect if your opponent controls face down or face up spell cards in their spell and trap zone. That is a really big hindrance for the deck when you're going second, so the Predaplan engine gives you more consistency and lets you go second more often. So from there, we'll go on to, we run 2 copies of Apex Avian and 1 copy of Mist Valley Thunderbird. These cards are very important for creating good targets to make with the Link monsters, Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty, as well as having the potential to have infinite negates by using that plus Union Carrier, which is pretty consistent to do in this deck, to establish a field that your opponent simply cannot activate enough cards to get through, which can normally win you the game on its own. Then I run 2 Barrier Statue, the Stormwinds. This is one of the most important cards in the deck. Most cards in the metagame cannot get past this card with a little bit of protection, because most people have their removal effects tied to monsters. So being able to prevent your opponent from getting more than 1 monster out per turn, and then being able to protect this Barrier Statue is going to give your first turn plays an immense amount of power that no one's going to be able to really get past, but also it can really help seal out games as well. Now I run 2 copies of this card because 1, you can discard it off of your Onslaught to get your plays going, and you can still have 1 left in the deck to summon. But on top of that, it's really important to have 2, because if you don't have battle protection for 1 on the follow-up turn, then being able to special summon a second one to prevent people from running over one of them is going to effectively give you that battle protection off of your Simorgh Link monster. So for some more consistency, we run 3 copies of Turquoise Warbler. The later loose cards are actually pretty interesting, being Wing Beasts and Wind. This card is literally a free special summon of level 1 out of your hand, which is really important because it can help you make Link Karibo, Relinquished Anima, and also get enough bodies on board to go into your full Union Carrier combo without actually committing your normal summon right away. So, pretty important card in the deck for consistency. Then I run 3 copies of DD Crow because it's the best hand trap in the current metagame that you can main deck without losing consistency. It's a Dark Wing Beast, so it's really good for discard fodder off your onslaughts, really good banish fodder for your Dark Simorgh, and in general, it can hit a lot of things in the metagame like Eldritch and Invoked and Shadal's, Salamangreat, pretty much anything. On top of that, now we're going to get into the spells. So we have 1 copy of Instant Fusion to go with the Predaplant Darlingtonian Cobra. It's searchable off of that, and it can help you summon a couple different important monsters, the first being Thousand Eyes Restrict, to help you get some removal, as well as getting you access to Independent Nightingale, the Lyrilisk, because when you summon that one, it's a Wing Beast that's Wind, so it can be used to Link Climb very easily with any monsters that you have on board without committing your normal summon to your Link monster, Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty, but also is unaffected by card effects, does a little bit of burn, and can help you make your Link monster Union Carrier much more consistently. So it's a very important card to have in the deck. I then run 3 copies of Simorgh Onslaught. Onslaught is a card that reads, you can discard 1 Wing Beast from your hand, add 2 Simorgh monsters to your hand with different attributes. And so normally you'll be taking the Dark Simorgh, you'll be taking Bird of Bringing, but sometimes you can look for some other ones depending on what's in your hand. And it's a very good way to bait out Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, because if they ash this card, you still have your Predaplant in hand, now they have really no way to stop you from going off. It can also load your graveyard with some things, such as other Simorgh cards, to get some more free graveyard summons. So, very important card. Also has a secondary effect, which is very useful, which is you can banish it from your graveyard to reduce the level of a Wing Beast in hand by 1, even when it hits the field for the rest of the turn. So you can use that to reduce the level of your Apex Avian, your Dark Simorgh, and any of your Simorgh main deck monsters by 1, so that you can either have easier time summoning them. So for instance, you can turn your level 7 Wing Beasts to level 6s, so you only require 1 tribute, which would be your Avian and your Dark Simorgh. And you can also use your Simorgh Onslaught to reduce the level of Simorgh Bird of Bringing to level 1, so you can normal summon it and go immediately into a Relinquished Anima if you need it. That's a pretty cool interaction and opens up a couple different plays. If we ever get more Link 1 cards that care about having cards be level 1, it'll be very useful. So, moving on, I run 1 copy of Simorgh Repulsion in the main. This has been a couple different cards. Notably, it's been a copy of Elbor's Sacred Land of the Simorghs, which is their field spell. This is another card that you can potentially run. I've just found that with Eldritch being in the meta and having them set so many cards, it really prevents you from playing. So being able to run Repulsion in the main and have it be searchable as a giant Trunade is really important for getting the deck online. The reason this is so good is because you discard 1 Wing Beast, doesn't matter what kind, and you literally just giant Trunade your entire opponent's back row. All their spell and traps are sent back to the hand, and it's pretty low cost. It also has the level modulation of Onslaught, but really you're using it to turn on your own Simorghs and get rid of back row threats. So very good card to have in the main because it's searchable. If it wasn't searchable, I wouldn't run it, but sometimes it's not the best for going first, so I would side it out in those cases. Elbor's is still a very good card. I could consider running it still because it's a searchable double summon effectively. However, I really had to look to cut some to make some space, and I feel like Elbor's just didn't really make the cut for now. So we'll be moving on to some other honorable mentions later, but generally that's how I feel about the card. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is really important for any type of combo deck. Preventing your opponent from DD Crowing your monsters or Ash Blossoming your searches. Pretty much anything other than Nibiru it'll help against. So, very important card to run at 3. Then I run 3 copies of Threatening Roar, which is the best way to prevent your barrier statue from dying in the current meta. A lot of people running Lightning Storm, Twin Twisters, similar cards to that. And if you have this card set, even if they try and remove it, Cosmic Cyclone, etc., you can pop this. They can't attack you for that turn, and they've now wasted a card thinking that you had a relevant back row. Maybe it was a Judgment or something. I considered running Judgments in this deck to prevent normal summons and Lightning Storms and things like that, but really, the fact that those can be removed before the other player commits to the board means that you really would rather have something that will help you go up in card advantage while also simultaneously protecting your monsters. So I tend to think that this is a better choice, so that there are other options you can run. And then lastly, I run one copy of Simorgh Sky Battle. Simorgh Sky Battle's really only relevant effect in this deck is that while it's face up on the field, Winged Beast monsters you control cannot be targeted by attacks or the card effects of your opponent, except for the one with the highest attack. Now, what that means is, if you have a Winged Beast, such as your barrier statue on the field, and your opponent goes into the battle phase while you have any other Winged Beast on the field with higher stats, they can't attack your barrier statue. And generally, your Simorgh Link monster is going to be on the field, which cannot be targeted on its own, and it also gives targeting protection. But since it can't be targeted itself, while these two cards face up on the field, Simorgh Sky Battle and Bird of Sovereignty, your opponent can't target anything that you have with any card effects, and they can only attack your 2400 attack monster, which, without special summoning, will be pretty hard for them to do generally. So, as a searchable card, it's very useful at protecting your barrier statue, and is one of the main reasons why I have had so much success with this deck so far. So moving on to the extra deck, we have a pretty standard, well, I don't think it's standard, but we have a couple unique cards in here. But first we'll go over just by link rating. So highest link rating is Boral Sword Dragon, Borload rather. You can run Boral Sword. I think Borload is better because there are going to be threats that you can't destroy that you're going to need Borload to steal. So I think Borload is just as good as Boral Sword in this deck. You're not really trying to OTK people. You're trying to control the game. So in a slower game where you're playing against someone who also has that sort of control capacity, you want to have something more like this. Also can't be targeted, which is very important as well. Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty, I run 2 copies of. You rarely will ever need the third. It has come up in some games, but generally you're going to be making 1. If they break it, you're probably going to lose. Sometimes you can recover, but generally 2 is all you need. I think 2 is also a good number in case you're running into True King Dinosaurs, because then they cannot banish all of your copies with Lithosigem. So, very good card for those who don't know. Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty is a Link 3 monster, only requires 2 monsters. One of them has to be a Winged Beast, so you can use a Link 2 monster and a Winged Beast and still make the card. 2400 attack, and at the end phase of every turn, you can special summon a Winged Beast from your deck that has a level that is equal to or lower than the number of empty spell and trap zones on the field. So a maximum of 10, a minimum of 0 if everything is full on the board. But since we're normally not leaving things face up on the field or in our spell and trap zone, it's normally, as long as your opponent has 2 empty spell and trap zones, you can summon anything from your deck. So very powerful card, not limited to wins, not limited or restricted to wins rather, and it's a very potent effect because it happens on every end phase, not just yours. Also, while it's on the field, it gives any monsters it points to with its link markers that are Winged Beasts targeting protection, so it's very, very powerful at protecting your monsters and allowing you to set up these very difficult to break boards. Beyond that, I run 2 copies of Harpy Conductor. Harpy Conductor is like the same thing as Bird of Sovereignty as far as how important it is to your combo. Harpy Conductor is the only link monster that you can use, to my knowledge, that allows you to have a 1-card Bird of Sovereignty off of Bird of Calamity. So generally, how that's going to work is you're going to normal summon your Bird of Calamity in the worst case scenario, use its effect to Foolish Burial any other Simorgh monster, because each of their effects are only once per turn. So you'd send something like Bird of Bringing to your graveyard. Simorgh Bird of Bringing's effect in the graveyard lets it special summon itself, but now you're locked into Winged Beasts for the rest of the turn, but that's okay. This is Banishment leaves the field. You send your Calamity to the graveyard to link summon for Harpy Conductor because she's a Winged Beast. Then you can simply revive the Calamity by its own effect. Banishment leaves the field, link off with Harpy Conductor, and bam, there is your 1-card Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty. So, pretty important to have at least 1 copy of Harpy Conductor. I think you can realistically run 2, in case you are running into a lot of True King dinosaurs. If not, I think you can make some space by cutting that down to 1. Some other cards that you can run in the extra deck to help improve consistency and be ready for more scenarios is going to be the Wind Charmer Verdant. This is going to be a really important card for getting through some more awkward fields. For instance, let's say you have a Dark and a Wind like your Predaplant and a Simorgh on the field. You wouldn't be able to make Harping Conductor, and you wouldn't be able to make a couple other cards. So being able to make her is going to get you a Wind that you can use to get a Link monster up while you have your Barrier Statue on the field, but also it can get you some more recursion if you have to pull up a floater. It's got some decent attack points, and generally it's a fine option for the extra deck. I don't think it's the best thing out there now that I've cut some of the other weirder cards from the list, but it's a pretty good card overall, so I would consider running it. Another couple cards that are pretty staple are going to be Nightmare Phoenix and Cerberus. These are your Link 2s that help you have removal in the main deck. You can go into them before you bring out your Barrier Statue to clear the way for stuff, and in the late game you can even get rid of your own Barrier Statue to then make these afterwards to get over some problem card. So pretty important cards to have as options in the deck because the main deck does not really have any sort of removal in it. Now we're going to get into a couple more of the true pieces of the combo. So we run 1 copy of Union Carrier because if you can resolve it, you can land on either Infinite Negates, or if you want to run some different cards in the deck, you can run some other stuff. But generally, this card's pretty free as far as giving you the ability to set up a really powerful turn 1 board. Also, the attack gain is not irrelevant, so make sure that you keep that in mind because the Barrier Statue that's been normal summoned with Union Carrier is just as good as it being untargetable, because in most matchups that'll be enough to lock people out of the game. Beyond that, I run Cherubini, Even Angel of the Burning Abyss. Cherubini is a really important card in the combo because the Predaplants can make this card, and since the Simorgh Bird of Calamity is a level 3, Cherubini can send this to the graveyard, whereupon you have the opportunity to special summon it back, and now these 2 cards makes your Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty Link monster. So very important card there. I never really use its anti-destruction effect with its arrows, but generally speaking, it's very good to have and can help you move around the board instead of Link plays before you go into a couple more of your more resilient boards. So part of what helps that is Link Karibo. Link Karibo is a key card in this deck, as having a Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty, a Link Karibo, and a Barrier Statue is almost impossible to out by most strategies. Generally, you'll have your Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty over on the right side of the map, if you can, or the board rather, if you can afford it. Then you'll normally have your Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds under it. I normally put it in a separate column. And then you'll have a Link Karibo, normally off the other side of the board because you moved with Cherubini and then you linked off into the other side. And so your board looks something like this. Generally, that's pretty impossible for people to beat over. The only way people can really get past this is Dark Ruler No More, which you lose to no matter what because you really don't have main decked ways to deal with that card. And you also can't really be hurt by Eldritch either because even if they can target and remove the Link Karibo, they still have no in-deck outs to this. So generally, this is going to keep you safe in almost every case against most matchups, and is what the deck can do the most consistently out of any opening. So Link Karibo, very important. The other extra deck cards that I consider running and that I think are basically mandatory, Relinquish Anima is one of the best Link 1s in the game that you can use in this deck. It's a dark, so it can help you Link climb. It can remove big problem cards like Boral Sword Dragon. It can help remove Apollosa. It can help remove any card that points down onto your field before you start going into your plays, because you can special summon it off of your Lyriluz Turquoise Warbler before you've normal summoned. And you haven't really lost anything as far as resources, because you still have your normal summon, you still have a bunch of cards in hand, and you still have a body on field. So it's a really good way to help break some boards, and it's a really good option to have in the deck. Beyond that, I run Thousand Eyes Restrict and Lyriluz Independent Nightingale for instant fusion targets. They're both level 1 fusions. One is wind, one is dark, one is a wing beast, and the relinquished is removal. So these 2 cards you have to run with the instant fusion because most of the time, if you want to make Union Carrier, you'll want to be able to either have special summoned a Lyrilusk already onto the field and then use Nightingale to link away with your Turquoise Warbler to make Union Carrier, but you can also, if you have, for instance, an extra Predaplant on board, or if you have some other type of monster on board, you can make it with Thousand Eyes Restrict as a dark. You could also link summon away using the Independent Nightingale to get your dark monster, which could be your Anima or it could be your Thousand Eyes Restrict. But generally, I like to be a little bit less committal and just use whatever fusion monster I'm going to use, rather than try to link away something because you've already used your one copy of Instant Fusion that's allowed because we're at 1 on the ban list. So having your 2 fusions and using 1 is normally the best line of play there. And then lastly, I run 1 copy of Lyrilusk Recital Starling. This card is really important for unbreaking certain hands. It used to be a much more pivotal part of the deck because I used to consider running Jester Confit as a free special summon for level 1, because then you could special summon Lyrilusk Turquoise Warbler, special summon any other level 1, whether that be Cobalt Sparrow, which is another Lyrilusk card, or you could summon your Simorgh Bird of Beginnings. Once you have those 2 monsters, you could just, if you had these 2, for instance, go straight into your Link monster by using its Grave effect. However, if you had 2 Lyrilusks in hand, for instance, Lyrilusk Turquoise Warbler would be able to, again, like if you had both of these in your hand, would be able to special summon herself as an inherent summon, and then once she hits the field, she can then use her effect to special summon another Lyrilusk from your hand or graveyard, so she can special summon another copy of herself. From there, even if you have no other monsters in hand, no other ways to access your combo, you simply overlay for Recital Starling. Recital Starling detaches 1, searches out a level 1 Winged Beast, which would be your Bird of Beginning, normal summon Bird Beginning. Now you have 2 monsters. You can link summon any Link 2, revive your Bird of Beginning, and now, boom, you've got the materials you need to make your Link monster. Bird of Sovereignty. So not the best way to get things done, but the fact that it can at least get you started is a really important way to unbreak your hands. It can also search DD Crow. A lot of people know that because of the Spiral deck having used it, but it's still really powerful in this deck. So I would highly recommend running that one. So now let's get into some of the basic combos. We'll start out first by looking at the Predaplant combo because that's the most specific one. The other ones are pretty general and are pretty easy to understand once you've seen one, so we'll start with the Predaplants here. So start out by normal summoning Predaplant Offer Scorpio, discard any monster. Here, in this case, we'll use DD Crow as our discard fodder. Right, so we'll put that over here. Offer Scorpio will then use its effect to special summon a Predaplant from the deck, and we will choose to special summon Predaplant Darlingtonia Cobra. Cobra's effect will activate, and we will search out a copy of Instant Fusion. Now with Instant Fusion in hand and with these 2 monsters on the field, we are going to link away to special summon Cherubini, Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss. And then we will use Cherubini's effect to, as cost, send a level 3 from our deck to the graveyard to increase its attack by that much. We will send our copy of Bird of Calamity to the graveyard, and then we will use Instant Fusion from our hand to special summon our Independent Nightingale. At this point, you have made 4 summons. Now, there is a consideration to play around Nibiru where you hold Instant Fusion in case they decide to Nibiru you once you make your Link monster, because at least at that point, if you've discarded another Simorgh bird, then you can go into, or if you have a Monster Reborn or an Extender in your hand, which I've considered running, but in this list I've cut out, then you can recover. But generally, if you are sure that they don't have Nibiru, especially in something like Game 1, then you can play Instant Fusion here, summon your Nightingale into any zone, it doesn't really matter. And then you can Link summon, using your Nightingale, a copy of Link Karibo. With Link Karibo there, you can then resurrect your Bird of Calamity from the graveyard by its own effect. And then you can link away, again, banishing when it leaves the field, the Calamities. Special summon your Simorgh Link monster up in the extra monster zone, so you can open its arrows. And now you have, with just your Predaplant Scorpio and any monster, made battle protection and targeting protection for your barrier statue, which is the card that you will search off in the end phase. So in the end phase, you activate this effect of the sovereignty and special summon your bird of this barrier statue of the Stormwinds. This is going to be easily the most standard, basic, good opener that you can have going first. Normally, people cannot out this, and if they have any spell and traps, they might try and set a couple, but generally those aren't going to do anything. And so, generally, at the end phase of that turn, you will special summon your Mist Valley Apex Avian from the deck because you were locked into winds by your own barrier statue. And now you have a beat stick that can negate anything that your opponent might have set, and then you can get rid of any monster they might have summoned to try and get rid of your Link Karibo, for instance. And then let's say they attacked into you and got rid of your Link Karibo, but they couldn't really summon anything else. In the end phase of your own turn, before you pass back to your opponent, this is why we run 2. You can now special summon your second barrier statue of the Stormwinds. And it's also protected from targeting. So now, even if they attack over 1, you still have another one. And that can be a really good way to recover. You don't have to summon the barrier statue again, unless you think they are going to have another normal summon that can threaten you. Or if you don't have any other battle protection, which you run a good amount of in this deck. So I wouldn't really be concerned about going for that one too much. Normally, you can just go for the second Mist Valley Apex Avian, because the best thing about having 2 of these is that they can protect each other. So let's say your opponent tries to target one of them, or let's say they're trying to negate one of them with something. You can chain the other one in response and put the one that is in danger back to your hand. So you still maintain a negate, and you negated whatever they were trying to interrupt you with. So having 2 of these in the field is very powerful. So then let's look at and see what the Union Carrier combo looks like. Generally, it's going to look very much the same. The only thing that really changes is the opener, or what you have access to. So if you have the Predaplant offer Scorpio, as well as a Leaderlusk in hand, or any way to special summon another monster, you can do it this way. So you can normal summon your Scorpio as normal, discard any monster. So again, let's just say we're discarding DD Crow. Then you can special, well, I suppose you can't do that exactly. First, you have to special summon the Leaderlusk from your hand, because you can only summon it this way when you have no monsters. Then you normal summon your Predaplant, you discard a monster, you do your Darlantonia Cobra, search your Instant Fusion, and then now you have enough monsters on the field to go into a 4 summon Simorgh Bird of Sovereignty. So again, if you're really scared of Nibiru, you can just go into your Ling monster here, and then you can save your Instant Fusion for later, but generally, from here, if we're going all in, we're going to link away for Cherubini, as we did in the past. We're going to put it over in this side of the board. It's very important that it goes on the left side. With the Instant Fusion in hand, we're going to special summon Independent Nightingale, and we're going to use Cherubini's effect to send our Calamity to the graveyard. Now, instead of making Ling Karibos here, we really only have the material to make our Union Carrier. Now, the reason this is relevant is because once you special summon your Simorghs from the graveyard, as I said earlier, you will be locked into Winged Beasts. So linking off into Union Carrier in this zone allows you to have all of your link zones, or all your monster zones, be open for link plays later, which is just kind of like an optimization thing. But from this point, because we sent our Bird of Calamity, we simply resurrect it by its own effect. We use it to link away with Cherubini and special summon our Bird of Sovereignty. Now, from this point, you can use Union Carrier to target Bird of Sovereignty and equip it from the deck with a copy of your Thunderbird. Once it's equipped with Thunderbird, in your end phase, you just special summon your Apex Avian, and once you've done that, on your opponent's turn, whenever they activate a card or effect, you can chain Mist Valley Apex Avian to target your own Thunderbird. Thunderbird will go back to your hand, and you'll negate the effect and destroy it. Because Mist Valley Thunderbird's effect is mandatory, it will force itself to special summon back to the field, and now you have infinite negates, because Mist Valley Apex Avian is not once per turn. So as long as they don't go into the battle phase and attack over your Thunderbird, they literally can't play the game. Unfortunately, Thunderbird is not a Wing Beast for some reason, so you can't protect it from targeting with your Bird of Sovereignty, nor can you attack will prevent it from being attacked with the continuous trap. But that's why we run Threatening Roar. Like, if you have Threatening Roar combined with this field, it's literally impossible for someone to break it without having Dark Ruler no more, because any card they activate, you'll just negate, and they don't even have a chance to attack your Thunderbird. Like, you might think about running Waboku, but Waboku doesn't help in certain matchups, because if they have any type of battle effect, then they will be able to get a swing at you, and that might have some other type of effect, like it's, think of it like a DD Warrior Lady or something. You don't want them to even have a chance to attack, so Threatening Roar is a much better card than Waboku in this case, since you're protecting your monsters. The only other combo we really need to go over to play this deck is going to be the general Simorgh bird combos, which you should understand at this point based on what you've seen, but generally you will normal summon a Simorgh. If you have any other cards in your hand, extenders like Turquoise Warbler, Instant Fusion, things like that, you can very easily just special summon those alongside them or before them, whatever the case may be. And then you use whatever your Simorgh's effect is. Let's say we're using Calamity. We'll use Calamity to send Bird of Bringing, in this case. Bird of Bringing to your graveyard, right? And then you'll special summon it back, link them both away, make sure to banish the Simorghs when they summon themselves from the graveyard, and you'll go into your Heartbeat Conductor, and then you simply revive again, and now you've got your Bird of Sovereignty. So I suppose we'll do a test hand before we conclude, just to kind of show you how consistent this deck is. Generally, you won't be bricking. You have, with 3 Lone Fire, 3 Scorpio, 3 Calamity, 2 Bringing, 3 Onslaught, which can search anything that you need, and other generic cards like that. Like, the deck's about 90% consistent on opening the board. So here I'm just going to shuffle it up a bit. Just kind of get it going here. We'll do a test hand to kind of play through one and just to see how the ratios kind of work out here. So we're about shuffled up, and just do one more. I lied, I'm going to do one more, and then boom. Sure, here we go. And then here we'll just cut it a couple times just to really mix it up. Give it one last good shuffle. And boom. All right, so here we go. So we're gonna put our deck right down here. And now here we go. So we're gonna draw 1 card, 2 cards. Unhappy to see the Instant Fusion in the opening hand, but depending on the hand, it could be just fine. So here we go. All right, cool. So here we have a fairly standard hand for having a low ceiling combo. We didn't get any of the Predaplant stuff. We didn't really get any good resource generation. But what we're going to do is we're going to simply normal summon Bird of Calamity, use his effect to send a copy of Bird of Bringing. I would also recommend sending Bird of Beginning generally, because top decking Bird of Bringing is going to be a lot better. So in this case, we'll just say we're going to send our Bird of Bringing to the graveyard. Then if they try to Ash that, you just call by the grave, obviously, so having that's really important in the opening hand. Here, you'll want to Instant Fusion first for the Thousand Eyes Restrict here, and this is because we need a Dark in our graveyard to be able to summon our Dark Simorgh from hand. Another important thing is that you can run IP Masquerena instead of the Win card, the Wind Charmer, but obviously that's a $40 card and it's not going to be in everybody's budget, but it is a good option to have, so you can consider running that as well. And here, for instance, you could go into IP Masquerena and then you'd have a couple other options, but here in this case we are simply going to go into our copy of Wind, because we have a Dark and a Wind, and then we are going to resurrect our Calamity from the graveyard to link summon out our copy of Bird of Sovereignty. So once we have the Bird of Sovereignty, we still have 1 card in our graveyard. There's no reason to leave it there. So you just special summon out your Bird of Beginnings right there. And then now with your Link Monster and your Fusion, you can simply banish them from the graveyard. And now you have enough material to make your Dark Simorgh. Now, it's nice to have that extra body there. It's not necessary, but then in the end phase, you would simply special summon your copy of the Barrier Statue from the deck. We already have one in our hand, but we'd rather pull it from the deck just to maintain hand advantage in case things go awry, and then boom. Now we have our untargetable Barrier Statue with 1000 defense. We have our Dark Simorgh, 2700 attack. Your opponent cannot set cards, cannot target any of your winged beasts with any of their effects, and they can't destroy your Simorgh of Sovereignty by battle, because it also has that effect where if it would be destroyed by battle, you can destroy a any Simorgh card that you control instead. So you have two targets for that, and you have your Barrier Statue. So at the very most, they can go into the battle phase, attack over your Barrier Statue, and then they can start playing, but now they can't interact with the rest of your board because it's untargetable, and they've already given up their battle phase. So if they don't manage to just kill you outright, you can then in your end phase special summon your Mist Valley Apex Avian almost 100% of the time, because very few decks run a lot of back row, and especially with Dark Simorgh, they wouldn't be able to set anything anyway. So you'd be able to bring out a negate and then start coming back into the game. So that's just one test hand. There are a lot more potential hands that you can get, but generally piling the deck comes down to, do you have the ability to play around the different potential hand traps that they could bring, and do you know what deck they're playing? Obviously, Dark Simorgh is going to be much more important in a Eldritch matchup than it will be in a Dragon Link or a Adamancipators matchup, but having a bit more knowledge about your opponent, such as in game 2 or 3, will help you make the right board to get an edge. And then in your side deck, you can run things like Evenly Matched, you can run things like Lightning Storm, Twin Twister, Cosmic Cyclone. Prohibition is another good one to help stop Eldritch. You can run Judgments in your side deck if you know you're going to go first. I think it's a pretty valid card if you don't think your opponent's running spell trap removal, or if they have a lot of really big blowout cards like Evenly Matched or like Lightning Storm that you think you need to hit. Beyond that, yeah, deck's pretty fun. It's a combo deck that stuns your opponent. Generally, it's not the most interactive deck. You don't really have a lot of points of interaction like you would in some other type of deck with a lot of quick effects or a lot of other type of cards like that. It's about 41 cards, this list is. I don't think you need to have it at 40 necessarily, but obviously the closer you can get it to 40, the better. Let's talk about some honorable mentions before we go. Obviously, as I said before, we include the potential to have one Elbor's Sacred Lane with the Simorghs, the field spell. It's a searchable double summon in a deck that's all about normal summoning. So it's always going to be good. It gives you a bit of attack gain too. So if you have to normal summon your Wind Barrier Statue, it can help prevent you from getting beat over by something like an Alistair the Invoker, or really any other meta couple attack point card. Another honorable mention is going to be 1-for-1. 1-for-1 is a very, very good card in this deck because you can use it to special summon your Bird of Sovereignty, or not Bird of Sovereignty, Bird Beginnings from your deck by discarding a card, so it can help you set up your graveyard. However, with 1-for-1, I highly would recommend pairing it with at least one copy of Lyrillu's Cobalt Sparrow. When Cobalt Sparrow is special summoned by any means, she can search a level 1 Wing Beast from your deck. If you 1-for-1 for her, then you can search your Bird of Beginning, and that is another 1.5 card Bird of Sovereignty. So very powerful potential effect there by her being able to search that card. And also, if you have your Lyrillu's Turquoise Warbler in your hand, when you get your Cobalt Sparrow, potentially, Turquoise Warbler can special summon herself from the hand and then resurrect your Cobalt Sparrow, or just special summon it from hand and then get you the search still. So it's a lot of free advantage, and it's very powerful, but it can brick a little bit because it can't be normal summoned. So that's why I cut these two cards. Some other honorable mentions are going to be Harpy's Featherstorm. This is a alternative to Call by the Grave, or you can also use it as an alternative to other ways to prevent your opponent from hand trapping you. because of the way this deck functions, you can almost always get to Harpy Conductor as a summon before your 4th summon. Even if it is your 5th summon, you can still chain this, but because it's a Harpy card, right? Harpy's Featherstorm just simply negates all monster effects on your opponent's side that your opponent activates for the rest of that turn, no matter where they are. Hand, graveyard, banished, whatever. So, and it can be activated from your hand if you control a Harpy monster. So Harpy Conductor counts for that. And if you can go into her preemptively, or proactively rather, you can simply activate Featherstorm from your hand, and then now they can't Ash you, they can't Nibiru you, they can't DD Crow you, they literally can do nothing to you from that point on. So it's a really good way to prevent your opponent from stopping you, but I cut it from the deck because it really does not help you advance your game state, and it gets a little cloggy by having too many traps, because then you don't really have a lot of hands that you're happy to see too many spells and traps. You need a high volume of monsters to make your Onslaught work, as well as have your Predaplants work. So that's why I cut the Featherstorm. But it's still a very good card. Another card that you can consider running is Cattle Call. I actually really like Cattle Call in this deck. It helps you play around Nibiru while also turning any Simorgh, like Little Bird, into a guaranteed Link monster in under 4 summons. The way Cattle Call works is that you can send any wing beast you have to the graveyard, and or beast warrior, and summon a monster from your extra deck if that's of the same type as that monster, except its effects are going to be negated, and it's going to go to the graveyard at the end of the turn. However, let's say you normal summon your Bird of Bringing. It doesn't, or Bird of Beginning rather. It doesn't have any effects. It doesn't plus you anything. But if you normal summon it, you can activate Cattle Call, send it to the graveyard, special summon your Harpy Conductor. Then from hand, that's your 2nd summon, by the way, you can activate Featherstorm from your hand at this point if you want. But even if you don't have something like that, you can just resurrect your Bird of Beginning, or whatever Simorgh you used. Send it to the banish zone, because it's banished by its own effect. Then you get rid of Harpy Conductor, and you make your Link monster. And that's 4 summons, so you can't even Nibiru that. So even if you don't have the Featherstorm. So that's a pretty powerful opener. I really like Cattle Call, but it simply does not work very well with the Predaplants, and I think the Predaplants are just a better alternative to Cattle Call. Cattle Call is also relevant because let's say they Imperm or Effect Veiler your monster. Before the card resolves, you can Cattle Call as a quick effect, because it's a quick play spell, to get rid of your monster to dodge the Impermanence or the Veiler. And then now you still get your Link 2 out of it, and they didn't stop you from getting any of your resources. So that's pretty important and pretty good option to have. The only other really options you have for honorable mentions that I would recommend are going to be Trap Trick, if you think that you're going to run a more trap-heavy build. I really do think there's merit in running Harpy's Feather Duster and Cattle Call and these types of cards. And with Threatening Roar and cards like that, Trap Trick can really set you up to have more consistency on reaching them for your opponent's turn. For instance, let's say you had Trap Trick and whatever other trap, like even if it's Featherstorm, now you have the other copy. So it's just more consistency. Trap Trick's pretty good. Unfortunately, if you run too many traps, you run the risk of opening basically not able to do anything. So I think cutting Trap Trick was better for the overall consistency of the deck, but it still is very functional with the deck. And maybe in a more back row focused build, you can run Trap Trick for some more stuff, maybe like artifacts, such as Scythe, or Morale Tech to help you protect your board and to still stun your opponent out. That could be a very valid way to build the deck. Beyond that, you can obviously run Upstart Goblin for more consistency. You don't care about life points, so your opponent getting 1,000 is not going to hurt you, but having that extra card to be able to dig and find something that might unclog your hand is going to be really important. Beyond that, you can run a copy of Reasoning. Reasoning's really good in the deck because generally you have a lot of different levels, so they can't call it right. And even if they do call it right, most of your cards have a graveyard effect, or you don't really care because you don't really need it. But it can help you bait out the copy of Ash Blossom as well, especially if it's game 1 and someone doesn't know what you're playing. You can just open with like a Reasoning, and then they'll have to think like, okay, man, do I really let that go off? Because maybe you're playing Infernoids, maybe you're playing like some other crazy deck that wants to use Reasoning to help get started. And they're like, okay, I Ash it. And you're like, okay, cool. And then you just go off with your normal play. That's another way you could run that card. But I would advise running against it because it doesn't really help you unclog your hands, because if you special summon a Simorgh off of it, they don't get their effect because they have to be normal summoned. So unless you hit like an Apex Avian or like a Dark Simorgh, or if you ran Cobalt Sparrow, then you could hit Cobalt Sparrow. But generally, you're not going to want to run Reasoning. You could also run Monster Reborn, as I said before, and World Legacy Succession, because those are going to be ways that you can help play around Nibiru, or play through Nibiru rather. Because let's say you end on your Link Monster, Simorgh, Bird of Sovereignty, and at this point, let's say they Nibiru you, but you still have Monster Reborn in hand. Okay, great. Tribute that, and now you've got your Nibiru token, right? Well, you can simply use your Monster Reborn to bring back your Link 2 that you used earlier in the turn. Like, let's say you made Harpy Conductor, you'd be able to bring back your copy of Harpy Conductor, and since she's a wing beast, you can just use the token and make your other copy of Sovereignty from your extra deck. So it really did not hurt you at all. Another thing you can consider running, in case you're really worried about running Nibiru and you want to main deck these Monster Reborn type cards, such as World Legacy Succession and things like that, you can run Link Spider. Link Spider is going to be you can make that off of your Nibiru token, and then you can use World Legacy Succession to revive a Link monster or any monster to that zone. So that'd be another way that you could get your Harpy Conductor back, even if you didn't have Monster Reborn. So those are two other really good options that you can run. I think the deck in the current metagame is decent. I don't think it's the best thing you can run anymore. Now that we have the release of Eldritch and Adamantimators, I think beforehand is a bit stronger. But generally, nowadays, with the Master Rule 5 change, the deck is not as relatively powerful as it was to other decks, because this deck could completely play under Master Rule 4 with no issues, and now it's fine to have your couple fusion monsters and such, but since you're still mostly using Link monsters, the deck effectively plays the same as it did, and you don't really get any benefit from Eternity Code or Secret Slayers, so the deck hasn't really gained anything new since all those sets came out. But if you stuck with me this far, thanks for watching. I hope that you got something useful out of it. You might try this deck out. Hopefully you have some fun with it. It's a pretty budget deck. You can build the deck for about $50 or less, depending on the cards you choose. So hope you have fun with the deck, and thanks for watching.